You are not poor because of your circumstances. You are poor because your mind has accepted limitation as normal. Most people wake up every morning already defeated. They check their phone. They consume other people's lives. They complain about opportunities. And then they wonder why success never visits them. But there is something history has proven again and again. A man with obsession is unstoppable. Not motivation, not talent, obsession. I know this, not because I theorized it, because I lived it. I was born in a one-room cabin in the mountains of Wise County, Virginia. No inheritance, no connections, no map toward greatness. My mother died when I was 9 years old. 9 years old, and already the world had handed me what most men would have accepted as a permanent excuse. But I made a decision in that poverty, in that silence, in that grief. I decided that my beginning would not write my ending, and that decision, that single iron decision, became the first seed of everything I would later build. I spent over 20 years studying the most powerful and wealthy men alive, and I discovered something shocking. Every great fortune, every empire, every extraordinary achievement began with a mind consumed by one burning desire, not a wish, not hope, a decision so powerful that failure became impossible. I sat with Andrew Carnegie in his library. I walked the floors of Henry Ford's factories. And I watched Thomas Edison work through the night, not driven by desperation, but by obsession. And what I found in every single one of them was not genius. It was certainty, a bone-deep, unshakable certainty that what they were building was not merely possible, it was inevitable. The world does not reward the hesitant, it rewards the committed. I learned this the hard way. There were years-long, humiliating years when my work was dismissed, when men of lesser vision laughed at my research, when the philosophy I was building seemed to bring me poverty faster than it brought me wealth. I remember sitting at a desk with no money, a manuscript the world had not yet decided to believe in, and a mind I was still learning to master. And in those moments, I did what I had studied the great men doing. I fed my mind faith instead of fear. I wrote my desire on paper. I read it aloud every morning and every night. I spoke to my subconscious mind the way a commander speaks to his army, with authority, with expectation, with absolute refusal to entertain the alternative. Look carefully at your life. The body you have, the money you earn, the respect you receive, the confidence you carry. All of it began in your mind long before it appeared in reality. I know this because I watched it happen in myself before I ever wrote a single word of Think and Grow Rich. I watched my own mind, scarred by poverty, grief, and repeated failure, slowly, deliberately transform under the pressure of one burning desire. Because your subconscious mind is always listening, always, while you sleep, while you doubt, while you argue with yourself in the dark hours before dawn. It is listening, and it is organizing your entire life around whatever you feed it most consistently. Most people unknowingly hypnotize themselves into weakness. I'm unlucky, I'm not smart enough, I'll never become successful. People like me don't win. I heard these words from my own lips once, before I understood the law, before I grasped that every time a man repeats a thought, regardless of whether it is true, he is issuing a command to the most powerful creative force in the known universe, his own mind. And after repeating these thoughts for years, their reality obeys them. And I chose to change my commands, not because my circumstances changed first, but because I understood finally, completely, that the circumstances were downstream of the commands. Change what you say to yourself. Change what you expect from yourself. And watch with patient, disciplined certainty as the world rearranges itself around your new belief. But the dangerous man, the rare man, understands a secret most people never learn. Your mind becomes whatever you repeatedly feed it. I fed mine with the stories of men who had climbed from nothing to everything. I fed mine with the principles I extracted from 500 of the greatest achievers this nation ever produced. I fed mine daily, without exception, with a vision of the man I intended to become. This is why obsession changes lives. When a man becomes obsessed with growth, his brain begins searching for opportunities automatically. When he becomes obsessed with wealth, he starts seeing ideas where others see nothing. I saw this in Edison, a man who failed 10,000 times in pursuit of the incandescent light. 10,000 times when a reporter asked him how it felt to fail so many times. Edison looked at him with the calm of a man who had never once considered himself a failure and said, "I have not failed. I have successfully discovered 10,000 ways that will not work. That is not resilience born from comfort. That is the product of a mind so thoroughly obsessed with its definite chief aim that it has genuinely reframed every setback as data, every failure as progress, every closed door as a corridor leading to the right one. When he becomes obsessed with discipline, he gains power over his emotions. I gained that power slowly, painfully, through years of watching my undisciplined emotions cost me opportunities, relationships, and progress. I learned that the most dangerous enemy a man faces is not competition. It is not circumstance. It is not even poverty. It is the chaos inside his own mind, the fear he has not confronted, the doubt he has not silenced, the narrative he has not yet chosen to rewrite. And when he finally controls his own mind, the world can no longer control him. I have lived this. The morning I stopped asking the world for permission to succeed, the morning I stopped waiting for external validation before I claimed my purpose, everything shifted. Not because the world became easier, because I became harder. This is why weak people fear solitude, because silence reveals the war happening inside their mind. I learned to welcome that war. I spent hours alone, not escaping my thoughts, but examining them, interrogating them, deciding with cold deliberation which ones deserved to remain and which ones I would starve of my attention until they perished, because powerful men use solitude as a weapon. Every hour alone becomes construction. Every failure becomes fuel. Every rejection becomes redirection. I was rejected by publishers and dismissed by academics, doubted by people close to me, and every single rejection. I converted, not immediately, not without pain, but with a discipline I had built deliberately through practice, through principle, through the daily application of everything I had learned from the greatest minds of my era. Understand this carefully. The richest people in history were not normal thinkers. They protected their attention like a man protects his last dollar when he is starving. Carnegie did not waste his mental energy on gossip. Ford did not scatter his focus across 100 half-formed ideas. Rockefeller did not let fear dictate his decisions. They controlled their environment. They repeated their vision daily until it became reality. I did the same. I wrote my definite chief aim on a card. I read it twice daily, morning and night, with emotion, with feeling, not as a passive reader skimming words, but as a man speaking directly to the engine of his own creation, his subconscious mind. I did this for years before the world rewarded me visibly years. And I tell you plainly, those years were not wasted. They were investment. Most people laugh at manifestation because they misunderstand it. Manifestation is not magic. It is mental conditioning. I never called it manifestation in my writing. I called it autosuggestion, faith, the subconscious mind, the definiteness of purpose. But the mechanism is identical. Your thoughts influence your actions. Your actions create your habits. Your habits shape your identity. And your identity creates your future. I have watched this law operate, without exception, in the lives of every man I studied. I watched it operate in my own. You become what you continuously believe you are. I believed I was a philosopher of achievement when I had not yet achieved very much. I believed I was a man destined to change how the world understood success, when the world had not yet given me a single reason to believe it. And I acted from that belief. I wrote from that belief. I organized every waking hour around that belief, until the belief became biography. That is why desperation creates more desperation, fear creates hesitation, and hesitation destroys opportunity, but belief combined with relentless action creates momentum. The moment a man fully believes his future is inevitable, his energy changes. I remember the exact morning this happened for me. I stopped hoping Think and Grow Rich would change lives. I knew it would. Not arrogance, not delusion. Certainty born from 2 decades of rigorous study, personal sacrifice, and absolute conviction in the principles I had uncovered. And the moment that certainty settled into my bones, my posture changed, my decisions changed, my standards rose. I stopped chasing distraction. I stopped seeking validation from men whose own minds were imprisoned by mediocrity. I stopped spending years trying to impress people who contributed nothing to my destiny. And suddenly, the same world that had once ignored me began responding differently. Because reality reacts to conviction. This is why some men walk into a room and command respect without speaking. I have been in rooms with Carnegie. I have stood next to men who held the economic fate of nations in their hands. And what I noticed was not their wealth. It was their posture toward the world. They had trained their mind to expect success, not hope for it, expect it. That expectation was visible. It lived in the way they carried themselves, in the way they paused before speaking, in the way they listened, with the confidence of men who knew that their mind was capable of solving whatever problem stood before them. I cultivated that expectation in myself. You can cultivate it in yourself. It is not inherited. It is built. Most people never reach greatness because they quit too early. They plant seeds, then dig them up every week looking for results. I planted seeds for 20 years before the harvest became visible to the world. 20 years of research, 20 years of refinement, 20 years of persistence through financial hardship, personal loss, professional ridicule. But I never confused the silence of the growing season with the absence of progress, because I understood, as every farmer understands, that the work beneath the soil is often more important than what breaks the surface. The universe tests every man with doubt before rewarding him with results. I was tested, thoroughly, repeatedly, without mercy. Can you continue when nobody believes in you? I continued. Can you continue when there is no evidence? I continued. Can you continue when your life still looks ordinary? I continued. Not because I was immune to doubt, but because I had decided once, completely irrevocably, that my desire was stronger than my doubt. And I proved that decision true every single day through action, because that is the phase where most people surrender. And that is exactly why most people remain average. I refuse to let you be one of them, not because I am without compassion for your struggle, but because I have seen with my own eyes, in my own life, in the lives of 500 of the greatest achievers who ever lived, what becomes possible when a man refuses the comfortable lie of limitation. Understand this deeply. Your current reality is temporary. I was born in a one-room cabin. I am leaving behind a philosophy that will outlive me by centuries. The distance between those 2 points was traveled entirely by the mind. But the identity you build now can change your bloodline forever. 1 disciplined year can erase 5 years of suffering. I watched this happen in my own life. 1 year of radical mental discipline, of autosuggestion, organized planning, mastermind alliance, and absolute faith produced more progress than the previous 5 years of unfocused striving. 1 powerful decision can redirect your entire life. Mine did. The day Carnegie challenged me to dedicate my life to the philosophy of achievement, and I accepted without knowing how I would complete the mission. That decision redirected everything. The moment you stop seeing yourself as weak, your transformation begins. The moment I stopped identifying with the poverty of my origin and began identifying with the magnitude of my purpose, I became a different man, not a luckier man, a decided man. Guard your mind carefully. I mean this with the gravity of every lesson I have ever learned. Protect your energy, protect your focus, protect your ambition, because the world benefits from distracted people. And I watched powerful interests, consciously and unconsciously, flood the attention of ordinary men with fear, comparison, and triviality, not out of malice, but because a focused man is genuinely difficult to manipulate. He cannot be moved by fear when his mind is anchored in purpose. He cannot be controlled by approval when his identity is built on conviction. He cannot be stopped by circumstance when his obsession is stronger than his obstacles. A focused man is difficult to manipulate. I made myself difficult to manipulate. It cost me years of social comfort. It cost me relationships that preferred the version of me that doubted himself. And I would pay that price again, 10,000 times, without hesitation. Because once your obsession becomes stronger than your excuses, your life will begin changing faster than you ever imagined. I have seen this happen in the poorest, most circumstantially disadvantaged men you could imagine. I have seen it happen in myself, and I am telling you with every ounce of conviction a man of 70 years of study can possess. It will happen in you if you decide, if you commit, if you feed your mind daily, deliberately, relentlessly with the vision of the man you are capable of becoming. The seed of your greatness is already planted. It was planted the moment you were born with a mind capable of desire, of faith, of imagination, of will. What you must do now is simple, not easy. And simple, decide what you want. Believe you will have it. Act every single day as though your success is already inevitable. And refuse with every breath you possess to quit before the harvest. The world has enough men who are hoping. Be the rare man who has decided, and watch with patient, iron-willed certainty as everything changes. Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Napoleon Hill.